Hey guys, so for today's movie review, I'm going to talk about the film The Singing Detective. It's a film starring Robert Downey Jr., Robin Wright Penn, who's just Robin Wright again, Katie Holmes, Carla Gugino, Adrien Brody, and Mel Gibson. And I guess it's directed by Keith Gordon. I don't know what any other films that guy directed, but so for Singing Detective, you guys, it's about a pulp fiction writer who is recovering from some type of skin problem that he seems to be getting over. Almost looks like a third degree burn when you're watching the movie. So he's getting over that. He's at a hospital during the recovery. And I guess there is a screenplay that or some type of a pulp fiction novel he had lying around that's been trying to be considered for a potential movie screenplay that can be turned into a movie. He has no idea where it is. The wife really wants it to be made into a movie, and this writer wants it to be made into a movie also, since he hasn't really written anything in a long time. And that story called The Singing Detective, which is the screenplay floating around, has just been considered, and he wants to get it made so he can get some money again. The wife wants him to have money again, and so throughout the film, he's kind of always thinking about it. He has these hallucinations from what he remembers from the story he wrote down of it. Um, and he's also even thinking about possible new directions he can take with it, since he's lying on the bed and has a lot of free time on his hands. Um, there's a lot of musical numbers in this, like him hallucinating, him envisioning the characters or in the environment that he's in. Uh, and that's about as much as the plot I can say. Mostly because not only is would it have potential spoilers, but because this film kind of lacks a direction, but I'll get here into what the negatives. It's kind of the most you can get out of the film as far as a plot goes. So for the Sinking Detective, you guys, for the positives, I like the pulp fiction look of this film. I like that it kind of looks like something you'd see out of a pulp novel from like what Pulp Fiction was based on, for example, or an old detective comic. I like the look of the film specifically when the detective side story is going on, where we're kind of seeing what Robert Downey Jr.'s character wrote as far as this singing detective story goes. Um, I like the film's approach on a writer's thinking process. I like how it thinks about how writers can change things, can improve upon their work. That they think about that story that they think could really be good. I think the film has a good sense of what writers think about specifically when they're in a situation where they have a lot of time on their hands and they're always thinking about that story that they hope goes places. I think the film does a good job with that. Um, Mel Gibson and Katie Holmes' performance in this are very good, and that's really saying a lot because I rarely ever recommend Mel Gibson or Katie Holmes when it comes to their performances. Mel Gibson, for sure, definitely approached this character that he plays in this film. He plays like this doctor that helps Robert Downey Jr. out. He plays him in a sense that I never really seen him approach a character before, so it was very unique seeing him approach a character the way I've never seen it before. And Katie Holmes' performance, she treats the role the way you would want her to treat it. She doesn't treat it in a way that you disapprove of. So, even though it's not like this masterful Academy Award winning performance, um, her nurse role is basically exactly what you want out of her. And because of that, I think her performance in this is really good. Um, there's some occasionally interesting hallucinations, specifically when he's thinking about the story that he really wants to get turned into a movie that he doesn't know the whereabouts to. So some interesting hallucinations happen throughout the film. For the negatives, you guys, since I do have a lot of them, I think this film has a very bad sense of writing. It's a very poorly written movie. Really bad movie if you really enjoy writing in movies. Just not a good film that has good writing in it. It's a very poorly written movie. This film lacks a consistent tone, it lacks a consistent mood, and it lacks a consistent story direction. It's all over the place. It's a comedy. It's a film noir. It's a mystery and suspense thriller. It's a dark comedy. It's a romance story. It's just all over the place, and it really can't decide what it wants to be. And it really bothered me after a while because I really wanted this film to be good, and it was just all over the place after a while. There's a lot of scenes in here where Robert Downey Jr. and the characters around him are singing, thus the singing detective, specifically when we have that detective side story and he's singing at like a club somewhere. Really bad like audio sync ups. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I could really get a sense of bad audio sync-ups, specifically because they're using songs that are really well known in jazz and like nightclubs and stuff. You could definitely tell it's not these people singing those songs. So whoever did the audio syncs of this film did a terrible job. I don't know if that was meant to be surreal or not, but like it was just really poorly synced up. And you can definitely tell that these people were not singing these songs. So really bad. Whoever did the audio editing on this film did a really bad job. Um, Robert Downey Jr. feels underused in this film. He's mostly on a hospital bed throughout this movie, and even when he is out and about doing something, like when he's this detective character that he envisions himself as, he really isn't doing a lot. And that comes back to the bad writing, where it's just so poorly written on the dialogue he says, his actions. So he's Robert Downey Jr. is very underused in here, and because I'm a huge fan of him, and because I do know he's a very talented actor who could provide a lot to a movie, it's really too bad that he spent his time with this really bad script, because I think he's much more talented than this film allows him to be. This film has a lot of really lame musical numbers, specifically when Robert Downey Jr. is envisioning the worst case scenario with things that are going on in the hospital. Really, really bad musical numbers in here. Um, not the greatest choreography I've seen as far as dancing and singing goes. And once again, the audio sync ups were really bad. So really lame musical numbers in here. In fact, I didn't even want musical numbers in this film. I think it's that poorly written. This film lacks a main premise. The synopsis I gave you earlier, that's about as much of a plot this film has. Because other than that, this film really doesn't have much of a premise beyond that. And I almost didn't say the premise I did, just because it's just so lacking in premise, and that's about as much premise it'll get before it just kind of goes into this epitome of not knowing what direction it wants to go in. And last of all, I think this film has a very poor sense of structure. They could have arranged this movie in a completely different order, and it would have been the same bad movie. Uh, really bad structure. It's just a very poorly put together movie. So the Singing Detectives, you guys, I give it a 6 out of 10. There's some interesting ideas here. I think I like how the film is approaching a writer's thinking process when they're in a hospital bed, or in a situation where they have a lot of time to think. But Mel Gibson and Katie Holmes do give a good performance, which is very rare from their acting career. But it's just not a good movie. It's just very poorly put together, and I really hate when Robert Downey Jr. isn't allowed to be the talented person that he is. It's just a very bad movie. It's just not a lot of good things going for it, and everything good in this film is done in a much better film, specifically Blue Velvet, Pulp Fiction, adaptation. There's just so many films I can name that do what this film did in a better sense. So 6 out of 10 for me, you guys. Not a good movie. Even if you like Robert Downey Jr., this is definitely not his best performance. If you do like Katie Holmes and Mel Gibson, though, maybe see the film just for them, just because I think this is a much better acting performance we've seen from them in a long time. But it's just, even with Katie Holmes, I think her performance in Batman Begins was probably better than this. Um, and with Mel Gibson, maybe Lethal Weapon, because I just love that movie so much. But as far as his acting goes, yeah, he definitely approached this character much differently than you think he would. So yeah, 6 out of 10, you guys. It's just really not a good movie.